So believe it or not, there's not many pages I marked in this book. It was a great book, a little bit on the fairy tale side, because we all know that in real life, love never works out that way. Uh, and they face trials and tribulations. This is the one I was kind of referring to. Um, it's a little bit where the young girl in the book, Kate McDermott, who is I'll just read the back of this to you before we start in. Marriage Vegas style. 2 months ago, Kate McDermott had left for Las Vegas, a level-headed virgin, and returned with a marriage certificate and a baby on the way. Experience had taught her Brady Brown would feel trapped by the news that he was going to be a father. So in her baby's best interest, she'd wait to tell them until after the dissolved the union. But the more time she spent with her, quote, temporary, unquote, husband, the harder it became not to reveal the truth hidden safe within her, and the feelings hidden in her heart. It's a ranching family scattered by the years and tears. They share mile-deep roots in one Wyoming ranch and a singular talent for lassoing the unlikeliest hearts. Let's see here. I don't remember. Okay. I will read the front little page to you, and I believe there's a note from the author. Good. I have a bad habit of not wanting to use the readers, and I should be using them. Brady's here, Brady's here, Brady's here. It was a chant in her head that made her want to drive off into the sunset without a word to anyone, never to return and never to reveal the truth, not to her family and certainly not to Brady Brown. But Kate couldn't do that, and she knew it. She was going to have to go out there and look him in the eye again and pretend that she wasn't more confused, more scared than she'd ever been in her life. You have to go out there, she told her image in the mirror. You don't have a choice. But maybe it wouldn't be so bad, she tried to convince herself. With her family around, he would hardly even know she was there. He probably wouldn't even have thought about their rash wedding or what had followed. And he also wouldn't have the slightest inkling that at this very moment she was pregnant with his baby. Dear reader, Patricia Kay was a child she could be found hiding and somewhere reading. Ever since I was old enough to realize someone wrote books and they didn't just magically appear, I dreamed of writing, she says. And this month's special edition is proud to publish Patricia's 22nd novel, The Millionaire and the Mom, and the next of the Stockwells of Texas series. She admits that it always was easy keeping her ideas and her writing fresh. What helped, she said, was, quote, in the non-writing activities, such as singing in church choir, swimming, taking long walks, going to the movies, and traveling, quote, staying well-rounded keeps me excited about writing, end quote, she said. But we have plenty of fresh stories to offer this month. After finding herself in the midst of an armed robber with a gun to the back of her. Nope, not going to read that one. Skip that. Okay, Kate determines to return to Las Vegas, find herself married with Cowboy's baby in her belly. And, of course, they do a special edition thing. Okay. A little bit about the author here. This book came out in 2001. At least it was copyrighted then. It's a bestseller author, Victoria Pade, of the both historical temporary romance fiction and mother of two energetic daughters, Corey and Erin. Although she enjoys her chosen career as a novelist, she occasionally laments that she has never traveled farther than her Colorado home, than Disneyland. Instead, spending all of her spare time plugging away at her computer, she takes breaks by writing, indulging in her favorite hobby, and eating chocolate. They do give a little map, which I like those sometimes. And the map shows where Elk Creek is in Wyoming there. And that's where it's located at. Matt McDermott, which is her older brother, has always been trying to get his younger sister, Kate McDermott, with his best friend Brady Brown. Little does he know that actually happened. They got together, and she thinks that he's forgotten all about her because she's not that special. But then they spend some time together because he's flown out to the family ranch because she wants to file for the divorce and get it, over with, thinking that he won't realize what's going on. Well, she tells him, and they have a big fight. And her brother, of course, sides with his best friend, which is shockingly enough. So now we're going to pick up where the brother and the sister are having words about what's happened. Okay, page 228. I just got to find where I marked it as usual. Are you sick again? Matt asked before she had the chance to answer his first quirk. This morning, but not any more, she said, because the whole day of moping and thinking she had finally come to the conclusion that it was time to tell everyone what was going on. Come in, she urged her brother. I wanted to talk to you anyway. Good, because I want to talk to you too. What the hell went on in here this morning? I saw Brady bring you a breakfast tray, and of all things, the next thing I knew, he was moving out. He moved out? Kate responded dimly. She heard some sounds from his room this morning, but she hadn't thought any moment that he would be packing his bags. In fact, she assumed that he was still there. And that's why that she hadn't left her room all day. She'd known that she couldn't see him and keep up the facade that she didn't have feelings for him. Not today, not when she felt as miserable as ever in her life, including when Dwight had eloped with someone else. That's her former fiancé. What do you mean Brady moved out? She asked, trying not to let out any emotions in her voice. I mean just what I said. He moved out. The Barton's son sent movers to clear out the place yesterday, and the plan for Brady to stay here while we did some painting and repairs. Then he was going to send out for his furniture and move in. No hurry, but 1 minute I see him headed in here with breakfast, happy as a lark, and 2 hours later he announces that he's moving over to the new place today, without anything done to it, and without a stick of furniture in it, he said, and he had his bedroll in the plane. He said he'll sleep in that, and boom, he's gone. I couldn't even talk him out of it. He even bit my head off for trying. So what the hell happened in here this morning? This is now page 229. Matt crossed the room by then and was sitting on the arm of the couch, a frown on his face to go with the accusatory tone in his voice. Obviously, Brady hadn't told any of them what was happening between the two of them, and Matt was taking his friend's side by default. So by the time they had come for explanation, but Kate didn't find it easy to give, despite her decision to do just that, especially when she was working so hard not to break down in tears at the thought of Brady had hightailed it out of her here and away from her as fast as he could, even though it was something she told him to do if he wanted to. She guessed that deep down she just hadn't wanted him to want to. I have a lot to tell you, Matt. I just don't know where to start, she said finally. At the beginning. The beginning was in Las Vegas. Brady and I got a little closer than we let anybody know. Kate went on to tell her brother what had begun over the New Year's holiday and how she and Brady had indulged in the inebriated impromptu wedding. The resulting pregnancy she so recently found out about, along with what had transpired since Brady's arrival in Elk Creek, up to and including this morning's argument. It took Matt some time for everything to sink in, and the shock was evident in his expression, but once he gasped the whole picture, he said, when Brady found out you were pregnant, he ran out of here? Matt's allegiance had suddenly switched to Kate. But Kate couldn't leave her brother with the wrong impression of his best friend. No, it wasn't like that. Apparently he figured out that I was pregnant before on his own. He came in here this morning to ask when I intended to tell him, and as for his leaving, well, I didn't order him to pack his bags and get out, but I urged him to go on as if nothing had changed, and when he suggested we not file divorce papers and stay married, I made it clear I wasn't going along with that no matter what. Why would you do that? Why wouldn't I do that? She countered with enough incredulity to match his. For crying out loud, Kate, you're pregnant. That doesn't make any difference. It makes every difference. What were you thinking? You're already married to the guy, though the wedding was a joke. Why would you send your husband and the father of your baby packing when you need him the most? That's page 230, 231. I don't need him, Kate bristled, even as it occurred to her that while it might be true that she didn't need Brady, it didn't take away any of the wanting that she's still there to torture her. Brady doesn't want to be married to me, she insisted. He only offered to stay with me to do the right thing. And you said leave? You said no leave? Matt asked with raging disbelief. Of course I said no. But I only said that for him to leave if he wanted to, that he didn't have to stick around, that even if he did, I still wanted the divorce to go through. Matt shook his head. You made such a huge mistake, I can't believe it. No wonder he got out of here. He must have felt like he was reliving Claudia. That was his former love, Brady's former love. The woman who dumped him. Yes, the woman who dumped him and left him burnt to a crisp. That's why he was tiptoeing around you at first, but it seemed like he'd gotten past it at the end there, was letting himself get close to you, and then what do? You push him away, pregnant and all. Matt was making her angry. He would have felt trapped, Matt, she said, as if he should see that for himself. You should know that. He would feel trapped just like Buster did, just like I've heard you and Rye and Shane and Bax say more than once about guys who end up having to marry someone because they gotten pregnant. Do you think I grew up with 4 brothers and don't know how you all think about things? Matt had a good grace to look shamefaced. Kate, that was guys just talking. It is not. Buster wasn't just talk. He hates Kelly, and he's not too much more fond of his own kids. He blames Kelly for every bad thing that happens to him, and even now. He tells her outright that she ruined his life. Do you think for 1 minute that's what I want? Brady is not Buster. No, but Buster was madly in love with Kelly before she got pregnant. Brady and I were just, well, I don't know what we were, but I know he wasn't madly in love with me, that's for sure. The most he'd say was that he might be falling in love with me. He said that? Matt cut in. He admitted even in the face you telling him to take a hike that he loved you? It was marginal, believe me. Probably because you were pulling a Claudia on him at the time, but even to admit that much then was a big deal, Kate. It's not a big deal. It's just something that he felt like he had to say. Brady doesn't say anything because he thinks he has to. And why would he have to? You were giving him his walking papers, and all he had to do was take them and leave. It sounds to me like what he was really doing was trying to get it across to you that he really cares about you and wants to stay married to you and be the father to this baby without going far out on a limb, and you were already sawing it off. So everything's my fault? Kate said, her temper flaring more and more. A lot of this is, yeah, you said it yourself. He knew that you were pregnant before this morning. What did he do with that information? Did he run while he still could have, without you or anybody else knowing why? No, he stuck around. He stuck around and made love to her, but Kate didn't say that. She just let her brother rant on. Then he brings you breakfast in bed and talked about the situation, putting himself in my sights when I caught him and not even caring. He tells you he loves you. Marginally, Kate reminded, feeling as if they both reverted back to bickering kids. Marginally or not, he let you know that he has feelings for you. He tells you he wants to stay married to you, and then you kick him to the curb. Thanks for understanding, Matt, Kate said facetiously. That was page 232, 233. We're on the very bottom of 233. Matt ignored her tone. Why in the hell would he have felt trapped when you made it clear he could turn his back if he wanted to, and he let you know he didn't want to? That's not being trapped. That's making a choice. The same choice I'd made if it was Jen and me in your situation, happily. You already were engaged to Jen, and you're crazy about her. The sun rises and sets in her when you're concerned. But Brady was only thinking to do what was right, not what he wanted to do, and certainly not happily. He'd be settling, and eventually he'd regret that. He'd resent it. He'd resent me and the baby. He'd look at me and then realize that he'd been trapped by the world's most resistible woman. The last part had come out on its own. As a part of a full head of steam she worked up. By the end of what she'd been saying, she regretted it because it revealed so much, too much, of what she'd been telling herself since Dwight's elopement. Too much of a portion of her was too vulnerable and was too afraid to let it into the light. But Matt caught it and wouldn't let it go. So you still have some baggage from your own that's playing in this role. Why don't you just go away, Matt? You're not helping anything, she blurted out as if a fit of temper, but her brother again ignored her. Oh, Kate, he said with a sigh, apparently not caring that she hadn't confirmed his opinion. Brady was trying to put his baggage behind him, but you let yours ruin things. That's not true, she defended feebly. Bull. You're so busy protecting yourself from that kind of hurt that when you had Dwight left you in the dust, that you're not seeing what's right in front of your face. I see what's right in front of my face perfectly clearly every time I picture Kelly. But Brady isn't Buster, Matt repeated. And how could Brady feel trapped if he's getting what he wants? It isn't what he wants. I think you're wrong. Well, you'd be wrong. That's good. Dig in your heels. Don't give him a chance. Take not only your past, but Kelly's past and present, too, and pull it around like a coat of armor. See what it gets you. It won't be what you want. It won't be what I'm betting Brady wants. It won't be what's best for the baby. But hey, what difference does it make? Sometimes I wish I was an only child. Sure, push everybody away. It's safer that way, isn't it? Matt said that in the same warning tone she used when they were kids, when he was going too far and teasing her. Don't blow it, Kate, he said, not heeding the warning. Brady's a good man. I've watched the way he's been with you since he got here. I've seen the way he looks at you. Things could work out with him if you let them. Matt stood then, hands on his hips, frowning down at her. Get your rear end over there to Barton's place and talk to him. Listen to him. And quit putting the past and other people's problems between you. Just look at him and for what he is. Matt left without waiting for a reply, and Kate sank farther into her chair, as willing it to swallow her alive, so she didn't have to deal with any of what her brother had said, with any of what she was feeling. 234, 235, 236. But the chair didn't swallow her alive, and like it or not, she couldn't disregard what Matt had said. Even if she did try to go on, disregard what she was feeling. She had never been more confused. What if her brother was right, she kept asking herself. A lot of what he said seemed to have more validity. After all, he'd known Brady much longer than she had, so she was seeing her past and Kelly's problems, when she looked at Brady and her own situation rather than seeing Brady as Brady. It was just so hard, too hard to say for sure. She knew she was afraid of reliving the past and afraid of ending up in the same kind of mess that Kelly had ended up in. That was a given. She certainly knew she was afraid that Brady would feel trapped by a woman he came to see the way Dwight had seen her, as a woman so resistible Dwight had had no problem maintaining years of celibacy with, and then turned her around and been propelled by such a burning desire for someone else that he eloped with. And yes, she guessed that the qualified as baggage, but it was also what happened, so she believed she had cause to worry, to more than worry. She had been paralyzed with self-doubt. She knew what Matt would say to that, though, and what Matt would say to it, too. That obviously Brady hadn't found her resistible, or she wouldn't be pregnant. That if he found her resistible, he wouldn't have been rooting around the way he had been since he ever coming to Elk Creek. He wouldn't have made love to her again just last night, and Kate wanted to believe that. She honestly did. It just wasn't that easy. Besides, even if that was true now, it had been true in Las Vegas. What if it wasn't true for the long haul? Buster had found Kelly irresistible before he had to marry her, but afterward he hardly touched her, something that had been a huge blow to her friend's self-esteem, too. Brady isn't Buster. Kate heard Matt's words in her head as clearly as if he were there to repeat them himself. But Brady was a man like her brothers, who had all talked that, quote, trapped, end quote, talk. A man who referred to himself as, quote, caught, end quote. And how she could discount such thoughts when he told her himself about having a wife and a baby right now were not part of his plans. How could she even entertain the notion that he wouldn't look at a forced change in those plans without regret and resentment? Although, truthfully, Matt was right. She wasn't forcing Brady. She opened the door for him, and, yes, she probably urged him out of it with enough rejection and vigor to remind him of the other woman's rejection. 236, 237. We're going to do two more pages, 238 and 239. But still, he might as well have suggested they stay married out of a sense of duty. And what if that was the case? It would result in the same things, wouldn't it? Regret and resentment. She thought it would. On the other hand, she could be wrong about everything, wrong about Brady, and Matt could be right when he said that Brady might feel that way, that Matt would be if Jen were in the same situation, that he and would be too happy about it. Okay, so a part of her wanted to believe that. Who wouldn't? But what if it weren't true? What if that's Brady's? But what if that's what Brady would have said if she had given him half a chance? Temptation washed through her, temptation to go to Brady the way that Matt had told her, to give him more than an opportunity than she had this morning, to listen without letting her own baggage get in the way. But should she do that? Was she only looking for an excuse to see him again, an excuse to hang on to hopes that she shouldn't hang on to? That was a hard question to answer, because after a day of misery she knew what she wanted, an excuse to believe things could work out. She wanted it more than ever she wanted anything in her life. So maybe you should take your brother's advice and go talk to Brady, hear him out, a little voice heard in the back of her mind suggested. Would that be such a mistake? Possibly not, because if she listened very closely, very carefully, then one way or another she would know what she was really on his mind. Even if what she was afraid of the most, what she already assumed he was thinking. And if what he had to say wasn't enough to convince her he genuinely did want to try and make their marriage work, if it wasn't enough to make her believe his feelings for her, and only for her, were behind it, then she could still make sure the divorce went through. Kate finally got up from the easy chair and headed to her bedroom and got dressed. I hope you're right, Matt, she muttered to herself, because if Brady was only thinking in terms of duty or obligation, she would have to turn her back on him. Only, she wasn't too sure how she could bear to do that again. I'm going to leave you with that, leave you hanging. Make you read this book. And I'm going to give it, because the heart wants a fairy tale to come true. We'll give this a 15. So that's a must read. So there you go, people. And I just dropped the book on the floor. Maybe it's trying to go for an extra 5 points. Anyway, has there ever been a situation where you've been your worst enemy? Has there ever been a situation where you've had regrets or things that you wish you wouldn't have had your past be the baggage that's gotten in the way of your future? Some moments to think on. I'll leave you with that tonight. Stay safe, wash your hands, keep your social distance, and wear your mask. Love you all. Stay safe.